The lights died across the Galactic Combat Arena just as Catherine Baker stepped into the ring. And in the 17 seconds of absolute darkness that followed, she systematically dismantled 12 of the sector's most feared alien warriors using nothing but the sound of their breathing. Emergency power restoration in progress. The arena's automated systems announced as backup illumination flickered weakly overhead, revealing a scene that should have been impossible. 12 combatants from 6 different species lay unconscious in a perfect spiral pattern around Catherine, who was examining a small scrape on her knuckle with the kind of mild annoyance usually reserved for paper cuts. "Does anyone have a Band-Aid?" She called out to the stunned silence of 53,000 alien spectators. "I think I caught my hand on someone's armor plate." Arena Combat Commissioner Zillax's 4 eyes went wide as his primary and secondary visual processors tried to make sense of the tactical display. The thermal imaging showed heat signatures dropping in systematic sequence. First, the Kraxan Berserker, then both Vorthon assassins, followed by the entire Zelkorian pack unit, all within 17 seconds. All while every camera, motion sensor, and combat analysis system recorded nothing but absolute darkness and the soft shuffling of footsteps. "Sir?" his aide whispered, mandibles clicking nervously. The power grid failure was intentional. The consortium fighters requested arena blackout protocols. They said it would give them optimal advantage against the human. Zillax watched Catherine wave cheerfully at the crowd, while stepping carefully around an unconscious Hydarian, whose exoskeleton showed precision stress fractures at exactly 17 different joint locations. His tactical analysis subroutines began throwing error messages. "Get Chief Medical Examiner Azila down here immediately," he ordered, "and contact Universal Combat Authority. We have a situation." In the ring, Catherine had found a tissue in her pocket and was dabbing at the tiny scratch. "Oh, good. It's barely bleeding. I was worried I'd have to explain to my students why their instructor looked like she'd been in a fight." She glanced around at the scattered forms of what had moments before been the most dangerous combat unit in 3 star systems. Though I guess, technically, I was. The arena's emergency medical teams rushed onto the combat floor, their portable scanners immediately beginning diagnostic sweeps. The readings made no sense. Every opponent showed signs of precise neural disruption, pressure points struck with mathematical accuracy, despite the complete absence of visual reference. The Kraxan's notorious battle rage had been ended by a single touch to a nerve cluster most species didn't even know existed. The Vorthon twins, trained since birth to fight as a synchronized unit, had been separated and incapacitated through what appeared to be a complex manipulation of their shared telepathic link. "This is impossible," Senior Medic GX Tull muttered, his scanner displaying combat efficiency ratings that broke his equipment's measurement scales. No species can execute precision strikes in absolute darkness. The spatial awareness requirements alone would require— "Excuse me," Catherine interrupted politely, "but are any of them seriously hurt?" I tried to be gentle, but it was really dark and I couldn't see exactly where I was hitting. The medical team exchanged glances that transcended species barriers. The Hydarian's exoskeleton showed impact points that had avoided every vital organ, while ensuring immediate unconsciousness. The Zelkorian pack members had been rendered unconscious through pressure applications that specifically accounted for their unique cardiovascular system. Each alien had been defeated using techniques perfectly adapted to their species-specific vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities that required years of study to even identify, let alone exploit in combat. "They'll be fine," Azila reported, her voice betraying the bewilderment her professional training tried to conceal. minor trauma, no permanent damage. But the precision of the strikes. It's like someone had detailed anatomical knowledge of 12 different species and could apply it perfectly while completely blind. Catherine brightened. Oh, good. I was practicing that new technique where you feel for the muscle tension patterns instead of just going by visual cues. My students back on Earth always have trouble with depth perception during sparring, so I figured if I could do it completely blind, I could teach them better spatial awareness. The arena fell silent except for the low hum of medical equipment. Commissioner Zillax felt his worldview developing stress fractures, not unlike those displayed across the Hydarian's armor plating. In the VIP section, Galactic Combat Consortium representatives began frantically accessing their databases. The original match parameters had been simple. Test the human's combat abilities against a standard mixed-species tactical unit in optimal conditions for the aliens. Reduced lighting, multiple opponents, home field advantage. Every calculation suggested the human would be overwhelmed within minutes. Instead, their tactical unit had been systematically dismantled by someone who was now asking if the arena sold churros because all that fighting had made her a little hungry. Commissioner. His aide's voice carried the particular strain that came from watching fundamental assumptions collapse in real time. The replay analysis is complete. Audio sensors tracked movement patterns throughout the blackout period. The human never paused, never hesitated. She moved through our fighters like she could see exactly where each one was positioned. Zillax stared at the tactical display, showing movement vectors that painted impossible geometry across the arena floor. That would require sensing, capabilities beyond any known biological parameters. Sir, the aide continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. She was humming. She was what? Commissioner Zillax's voice cracked across 3 different harmonic frequencies. Humming, sir. Audio analysis indicates she was humming what appears to be a human recreational song titled Don't Stop Believin', while systematically incapacitating our tactical unit. Catherine looked up from where she was stretching her hamstrings against the arena wall. Oh, that. Yeah, I always hum during workouts. Helps me keep rhythm. Plus, it was so quiet in here with the lights out, I figured a little music might help everyone relax. The medical teams had finished their preliminary scans and were beginning the more complex task of reviving the unconscious fighters. Each diagnostic revealed the same impossible precision. Strikes calculated not just for species-specific vulnerabilities, but for individual physiological variations. The Kraksan berserker, known for his resistance to neural disruption, had been defeated through a pressure application that accounted for his unique genetic markers. The Vorthon twins showed evidence of synchronized shutdown. Their shared consciousness had been manipulated through techniques that shouldn't exist outside theoretical xenobiology textbooks. I don't understand. Senior combat analyst Rex Thol muttered, his tentacles writhing in agitation as he reviewed the sensor data. The spatial calculations alone. She moved between targets with optimal efficiency while avoiding 12 different combat styles simultaneously. In absolute darkness. Catherine finished her stretching and walked over to where the analysts were clustered around their displays. Mind if I take a look? I'm always curious about the technical stuff. She peered at the holographic reconstruction of the fight, watching her own movement patterns traced in 3-dimensional light. Oh wow, that's really cool. Though you got my 3rd step wrong there. I was actually moving to avoid that big guy's backswing, not positioning for my next strike. Though I guess it worked out the same. Rex Thol's primary brain began sending distress signals to his secondary consciousness. You're saying these movement patterns were reactive, not planned? Well, sure. I mean, I could hear where everyone was breathing, so I knew their approximate positions. Then it's just a matter of listening to how they're moving and adjusting accordingly. Basic spatial awareness, really. The arena's chief physician, Dr. Veltarn, approached carrying a portable scanner the size of a briefcase. Miss Baker, would you consent to a basic physiological examination? We need to understand how this was possible. Catherine shrugged agreeably. Sure, but I should warn you, I had a lot of coffee this morning, so my heart rate might be a little elevated. The scanner's results appeared instantly on Dr. Veltarn's display, then disappeared as the device recalibrated itself, apparently convinced it was malfunctioning. The second scan showed identical results. Human baseline in every category. No cybernetic enhancements, no genetic modifications, no unknown organs or sensory apparatus. Standard human physiology with one notable exception. Her spatial awareness scores broke the measurement scale. This is impossible, Dr. Veltarn whispered. Your acoustic processing capabilities are registering at levels that would require specialized auditory organs we're not detecting. Oh, that's probably just the echolocation thing, Catherine said helpfully. Humans can do that, you know. Most people just never bother to practice it seriously. Commissioner Xilax felt reality developing fault lines. Echolocation? Humans can use echolocation? Sure, haven't you ever watched a blind person navigate? Humans adapt pretty well when we have to. I just practice it more than most because it's useful for teaching self-defense classes. Hard to help students with their form if you can only see what's happening from one angle. Arena Security Chief Thok Ran, whose species prided themselves on superior combat awareness, stepped forward. Demonstrate, he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never encountered a problem that couldn't be solved through superior force. Catherine looked around the arena thoughtfully. Well, okay. But maybe we should clear some space. I don't want to accidentally bump into anyone. The arena staff quickly established a perimeter as Catherine positioned herself in the center of the ring. Without warning, she closed her eyes and began walking with confident steps toward a portable equipment cart that had been left 30 meters away. She navigated around 3 support pillars, stepped over a power cable, and reached out to touch the cart with precision that suggested she could see exactly where she was going. Okay, that was the easy one, she called out, eyes still closed. The cart has lots of metal that reflects sound really well. Want to try something trickier? Security Chief Thok Ran gestured to his team, who began positioning themselves randomly throughout the arena floor. 12 trained security officers, each from a different species with naturally superior stealth capabilities, took up positions in complete silence. Catherine tilted her head slightly, as if listening to something only she could hear. Then she began to move. She walked directly to each security officer in turn, tapping them gently on the shoulder before moving to the next. Her path traced the most efficient route between all 12 positions, and she never hesitated or paused to get her bearings. When she finished, she opened her eyes and smiled. That was fun, though the Corellian officer in the back corner should probably see a medic. His breathing sounds a little wheezy. Might be developing an upper respiratory infection. The security team stood in stunned silence as their colleague confirmed that yes, he had been feeling a slight congestion coming on for the past few days. Commissioner Zilzax's communication device chimed with an incoming priority message from Galactic Combat Authority headquarters. The message was brief and to the point. Emergency review required. Human combat capabilities may require immediate sport classification revision. Send all data immediately. Ms. Baker, he said carefully, exactly how many humans share these Abilities? Catherine considered the question seriously. Well, I mean, all of them potentially. It's just a matter of practice and training. Back home, we have whole schools dedicated to developing enhanced spatial awareness. Martial arts, dance, athletics. Lots of activities that teach you to move through space efficiently. She paused, then added thoughtfully, though I guess I practice more than average. Between teaching kids classes and my own training, I'm usually working on spatial awareness exercises about 4 hours a day. The arena's communication system crackled to life with an incoming message from Universal Combat Authority. All human participants in combat sports to be immediately suspended pending capability review. Requesting full documentation of this incident for emergency classification hearing. Catherine checked the time display on the arena's scoreboard and frowned slightly. I hope this doesn't take much longer. I've got a beginner's class at 6, and I still need to stop by the grocery store. We're working on basic balance exercises tomorrow, and I promise to bring those foam blocks the kids like. Within an hour, the Galactic Combat Arena had transformed into an impromptu research facility. Emergency protocols had been activated across 3 star systems, bringing together the most renowned experts in xenobiology, combat analysis, and sensory physiology. The Universal Combat Authority's chief investigator, Janira, arrived with a team of specialists whose combined knowledge represented the pinnacle of galactic understanding of combat capabilities. Catherine sat on a bench near the arena entrance, sharing her water bottle with a small Zelkorian cub who had somehow wandered down from the spectator sections and seemed fascinated by her shoelaces. The preliminary scans confirm our worst fears, Dr. Yextal announced to the assembled experts. The human displays no enhanced physiology, no technological augmentation, no genetic modifications. She accomplished this through what she terms basic spatial awareness. Senior combat theorist Maktul, whose species had developed the fundamental principles of tactical combat used throughout the galaxy, studied the holographic reconstruction for the 15th time. The movement patterns violate core principles of engagement theory. She simultaneously defended against attacks from 12 different directions while maintaining offensive capability against targets she couldn't see. That's not the disturbing part, added Dr. Kelshawn, the galaxy's leading expert in sensory biology. According to our tests, human echolocation capabilities exceed those of species that evolved specifically for acoustic navigation. She's processing spatial information faster than our best artificial intelligence systems. Catherine looked up from where she was teaching the Zelkorian cub to tie shoes. Are you talking about the hearing thing? Because that's not really that complicated. You just have to pay attention to how sounds bounce around. Most humans don't bother because we rely on vision so much. But if you practice... She trailed off as she noticed the expert staring at her with expressions that transcended species. The universal look of professionals watching their expertise become obsolete. Master combat instructor Vela Khan, who had trained champions from 47 different species, approached with the careful movements of someone whose worldview was actively crumbling. Ms. Baker, would you be willing to participate in a more comprehensive evaluation? Sure, Catherine agreed, gently helping the cub with a particularly tricky loop. But I should mention that I'm not really a professional fighter. I just teach self-defense classes at the community center back home. The evaluation began simply enough. A basic obstacle course in normal lighting conditions. Catherine navigated it efficiently but unremarkably, chatting about her grocery list while stepping over barriers and ducking under hanging obstacles. Now in reduced lighting, Velikon instructed. Catherine's performance remained unchanged. She continued her conversation about whether she should buy regular bananas or try those weird purple ones while moving through the course with identical precision. Complete darkness. Still no change. Catherine asked if anyone knew a good recipe for banana bread while completing the course in exactly the same time as her previous runs. Add combat opponents. 4 master-level fighters positioned themselves throughout the darkened obstacle course, each representing a different combat philosophy. Catherine entered the course and immediately began narrating her progress like a sports commentator. Okay. There's someone breathing really quietly about 6 feet to my left. Probably trying the stealth approach. Someone else is doing that thing where they try to control their heartbeat. But you can still hear the blood flow if you listen right. And I think there's someone hanging from the ceiling, which is creative but kind of obvious because of the way their equipment creaks when they move. She navigated the course while casually neutralizing each opponent through techniques so gentle they seemed almost apologetic. Her commentary never stopped, and she completed the course in record time while making observations about proper breathing techniques during combat situations. The experts huddled in emergency consultation while Catherine asked if anyone had a phone charger, because hers was running low and she needed to check her class schedule. "This changes everything," whispered Dr. Zexhari, the galaxy's foremost authority on evolutionary combat adaptation. If one human can do this, what about the others? How many humans are there? Commissioner Zillax consulted his database with growing horror. Current estimates suggest approximately 8 billion humans on their home planet, with colonies on 17 different worlds. The silence that followed this announcement was the kind usually reserved for moments when entire civilizations realized they had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of reality. 8 billion, Janira repeated slowly. 8 billion beings with these capabilities. Catherine looked up from her phone. Oh, way more than that if you count the outer colonies, though most people don't really train for combat stuff. I mean, I only got into it because my nephew wanted to learn karate and his mom thought it would be safer if I taught him instead of sending him to one of those strip mall places. Master Velikon's tentacles curled with stress patterns that hadn't been documented since the Great War of Sectors. Ms. Baker, exactly how many humans would you estimate have combat training similar to yours? Oh, that's hard to say. Depends on what you mean by similar. I mean, there are probably a few million people who teach martial arts professionally. Then you've got military training, law enforcement, competitive athletes, dancers who cross-train, construction workers who develop really good spatial awareness. She paused thoughtfully. Plus, anyone who grew up playing sports or learned to navigate without sight or had to develop enhanced reflexes for their job. So maybe a few 100 million? Though most of them would probably be better than me at their specialties. The emergency consultation turned into something resembling a wake. "We need to contact the Galactic Council immediately," Janira declared. "This represents a fundamental shift in our understanding of combat capabilities across known species." Catherine's phone buzzed with a text message. "Oh, good. My class got moved to 7 instead of 6. That gives me more time to help you guys figure this out." She looked around at the assembled experts with genuine concern. "You all seem really stressed about this. Is there something I can do to help?" The question hung in the air like a cosmic punchline that nobody was quite ready to laugh at. The emergency session convened in the arena's main conference chamber had grown to include representatives from the Galactic Council, the Universal Combat Authority, and the Interspecies Athletic Commission. Catherine sat at the head of the table, sharing a bag of trail mix with 3 young alien spectators who had somehow acquired clearance to attend what was rapidly becoming the most significant sporting regulatory meeting in galactic history. Let me see if I understand this correctly. Council Representative Thexarn began, his voice carrying the weight of someone whose job had just become exponentially more complicated. Humans possess innate capabilities that exceed our current classification systems for combat sports participation. Well, Catherine said, offering a cashew to a small Corellian whose parent worked arena security. I wouldn't say innate exactly. It's more like practice, like you know how some species are naturally good at math, but they still have to learn calculus? She turned to address the room more broadly. Humans are kind of generalists. We're not the strongest or fastest or toughest, but we're really good at adapting and learning new things. Plus, we're persistent to the point where it sometimes gets weird. Dr. Kelshawn leaned forward in his hover chair. Could you elaborate on that persistence factor? Catherine thought for a moment while helping the young Corellian open a particularly stubborn water bottle. Well, like, if a human decides they want to be good at something, they'll just keep doing it until they are. Even if it takes years. Even if it seems impossible. We had this guy back on Earth who decided he wanted to run really far. So he just kept running until he could do 100 miles without stopping. Another person wanted to memorize things better. So they figured out how to memorize the order of 50 shuffled decks of cards. The representatives exchanged glances that conveyed volumes about the growing scope of their problem. And this persistence extends to combat training? Master Velikon asked. Sure, I mean, combat is just problem-solving with physical constraints, right? You've got to figure out how to achieve your objective while dealing with obstacles that are actively trying to stop you. Humans are really good at that kind of puzzle. Catherine paused to retrieve a dropped crayon for one of the kids, who had apparently decided to draw a picture of the day's events. Plus, we're social learners. If one human figures out how to do something effectively, we share that information. Then the next person builds on it and finds ways to do it better. She gestured around the room. Like everything I know about spatial combat, I learned from other people who learned from other people. My instructor learned from his instructor, who learned from someone who figured out how to adapt traditional techniques for modern situations. It's all just accumulated knowledge. The Interspecies Athletic Commissioner, Vel Thagor, had been quietly reviewing human participation records across various sporting events. His findings were causing his scales to shift to stress pattern colors that hadn't been documented in his species for generations. According to our database, he announced with the tone of someone delivering news of galactic significance, humans have been competing in various sporting events across 17 star systems for the past 30 standard years. In every single case, we've had to create new categories or modify existing rules to accommodate their capabilities. He brought up a holographic display that filled the conference room with data. Endurance events, precision sports, team coordination challenges, adaptive problem-solving competitions. Humans don't just participate. They systematically excel to the point where we've had to restructure entire sporting disciplines. Catherine looked at the data with interest. Oh, cool. There's my cousin David. He's the one who won that long-distance swimming thing on Kepler 442b, though I think he was mostly just excited about the chance to swim in an alien ocean. The conference room fell silent as the implications sank in. Ms. Baker, Janira said carefully, what you're describing suggests that humans treat extraordinary achievement as routine? Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, we like challenges. If something seems impossible, that just makes it more interesting. Like, impossible isn't really a limit. It's more like the starting point for figuring out what you need to learn. She helped one of the kids reach a snack from the conference table. Plus, we like to share discoveries. When someone figures out a new way to do something, we don't keep it secret. We teach it to other people, and they teach it to their students. And pretty soon, you've got thousands of people who can do the thing that used to be impossible. The room erupted in urgent whispered consultations as representatives began calculating the exponential implications of skill sharing among 8 billion adaptable, persistent, challenge-oriented beings. Commissioner Zelax approached Catherine with the expression of someone whose universe had been permanently recalibrated. Ms. Baker, would you be willing to serve as a consultant for establishing new human participation protocols in combat sports? Catherine brightened. That sounds fun, though I should probably mention that I'm not even close to being the best human at this stuff. My sensei back home could do everything I just did while blindfolded and carrying on a phone conversation. And there are probably a few thousand people who could outfight me without breaking a sweat. The emergency consultation that followed this revelation lasted 17 minutes and resulted in the immediate formation of the Human Capability Assessment Committee, the Emergency Protocol Development Task Force, and the Interspecies Athletic Restructuring Initiative. Catherine checked her phone and stood up from the table. This has been really interesting, but I need to head home now. My class starts in an hour, and I promised the kids we'd work on basic balance exercises. Plus, I should probably warn them that some of their techniques might be more effective than they realized. As she gathered her things and said goodbye to her young alien friends, the conference room buzzed with the kind of urgent activity that typically followed the discovery of new laws of physics. One more question, Janira called out as Catherine reached the door. These students you teach, how old are they? Catherine paused in the doorway, smiling. Oh, mostly between 8 and 12. They're really at the perfect age for developing spatial awareness and adaptive thinking. Plus, they think learning to fight in the dark is the coolest thing ever. The silence that followed her departure was broken only by the sound of 47 different species simultaneously accessing their emergency communication systems. 3 months later, the Galactic Combat Arena had been transformed into something unprecedented in the known universe. The first interspecies adaptive combat training center. Catherine stood in what used to be the main competition ring, now converted into a teaching space where young beings from 12 different species practiced basic spatial awareness exercises under her patient guidance. Remember, you don't have to see something to know where it is. She encouraged a small group of Zelkorian cubs who were attempting to navigate an obstacle course while wearing vision-dampening devices. Just listen to how your footsteps sound when they echo off different surfaces. In the observation deck above, Commissioner Zelax watched the proceedings with the kind of fascination typically reserved for witnessing miracles. The human protocols that had emerged from 3 months of intensive research and policy development had revolutionized not just combat sports, but the entire galactic understanding of adaptive capability. Status report, he requested from his aide, whose job had evolved from simple administrative support to something resembling interpreter of impossible human achievements. The Separate Human League has successfully launched with competitions scheduled across 47 systems, the aide reported. Mixed species divisions are now operating under the new adaptive capability classifications that account for different types of excellence rather than simple species-based categories. And the training centers based on Ms. Baker's teaching methods have waiting lists that stretch into next year. Zelax nodded while watching Catherine demonstrate how to use acoustic feedback to determine the density of different materials. A young Corellian student had just successfully identified the contents of 12 sealed containers using nothing but the sound of gentle tapping. and Catherine was celebrating this achievement with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for major athletic victories. And the other human instructors? Arriving weekly. Each one demonstrates capabilities that require us to expand our understanding of what's possible. Yesterday, a human named Jennifer Thompson taught our senior combat analysts how to use peripheral vision to track 17 different moving objects simultaneously. She mentioned it was a technique she developed for coaching youth soccer. In the training ring, Catherine had moved on to teaching the basics of predictive movement, how to anticipate where someone was going based on subtle shifts in their center of gravity. Her students, representing 6 different species with wildly different body structures, were all successfully applying the technique despite their vastly different physiologies. The most remarkable thing, the aide continued, is that they don't seem to consider any of this remarkable. Yesterday, I asked Instructor Thompson if her techniques were advanced human training methods. She said she learned them from watching her grandmother teach tennis lessons to elderly humans who wanted to improve their reaction times. A communication alert chimed, and Zilax accepted the incoming message from the Galactic Sports Authority headquarters. The content was routine now. Another request for human consultants to help restructure competitive regulations in 3 more sporting disciplines. This week, it was precision archery, competitive memory sports, and something called obstacle course racing that apparently involved humans voluntarily making athletic challenges as difficult as possible, and then competing to see who could overcome them fastest. "Sir," his aide said quietly, "there's been a development. Miss Baker mentioned that her home planet has something called Olympic Games, where humans gather every few years to compete in hundreds of different sporting challenges simultaneously." Zilax felt the familiar sensation of his understanding of the universe requiring structural modifications. How many different sports? Current count suggests over 300 distinct competitive disciplines, including several that involve humans intentionally making physical challenges more difficult just to see if they can be overcome. In the training ring below, Catherine had begun working with a mixed group of young aliens and the teenage human children of colonial families. The humans were teaching the aliens techniques for enhanced spatial processing, while the aliens shared their species' natural advantages in areas like enhanced reflexes or superior strength coordination. The result was a form of cross-species skill development that was producing capabilities none of the species had achieved independently. "There's something else," the aide added. "Intelligence reports suggest that humans have been quietly excelling in non-sporting areas as well. Agricultural efficiency, engineering innovation, diplomatic problem-solving. Apparently, their approach to impossible challenges extends well beyond athletic competition." Catherine's voice carried across the training space as she worked with a young Hydarian whose exoskeleton made traditional movement exercises impossible. Within minutes, she had developed an entirely new approach that adapted human techniques to his unique physiology, creating possibilities that hadn't existed before their collaboration. "The Olympic Games," Zilax said slowly. "How often did you say they occur?" "Every 4 standard years, sir. The next one is scheduled for 18 months from now." Zilax watched Catherine high-five a Corellian student who had just successfully completed an exercise that required simultaneous processing of acoustic, tactile, and spatial information. The child was beaming with pride, while Catherine was already moving on to help the next student, treating the breakthrough as simply another step in a routine learning process. "Send a diplomatic request to the human authorities," he decided. "The Galactic Sports Authority would like to send observers to these Olympic Games." "How many observers, sir?" Zilax considered the scope of what they were likely to witness. 8 billion humans who treated impossible challenges as recreational activities, competing in hundreds of disciplines that pushed the boundaries of what beings could achieve through training and determination. All of them, he said finally. Send all of them. In the training ring, Catherine was explaining to her mixed species class that tomorrow they'd be learning about team coordination dynamics, apparently a set of techniques humans had developed for achieving collective goals that exceeded what individuals could accomplish separately. Her students listened with the kind of attention usually reserved for revelations of cosmic significance, while Catherine described it as basically just learning to work together really well. As the training session ended and young beings from across the galaxy headed home to practice techniques that would have been considered impossible 6 months earlier, Catherine began cleaning up the equipment with the same casual efficiency she brought to everything else. Commissioner Zelax made a note to expand the arena's storage facilities. If human teaching methods continued spreading at their current rate, they were going to need room for a lot more impossible achievements that were rapidly becoming routine. Outside, the first graduates of the Interspecies Adaptive Combat Program were heading to competitions across the galaxy, carrying with them techniques that would continue reshaping the understanding of what beings could accomplish when they combined human persistence with alien capabilities. Catherine locked up the training equipment, checked her schedule for tomorrow's classes, and headed home to walk her dog. A routine end to another day of accidentally revolutionizing galactic civilization through the simple act of sharing knowledge and encouraging others to exceed what they thought possible. In her wake, the universe continued adapting to accommodate the reality of humans, beings who treated impossible as an invitation and shared their discoveries with anyone interested in learning.